Hello Libra, and welcome to your reading. This is Bright Soul Collective Tarot. My name is Laura, and these will be your intuitive insights and advice for the month of June 2022. So this reading will be for Libra, Sun, Moon, and Rising. And by all means, if you're into astrology and you know your Sun, Moon, and Rising signs, feel free to watch or listen to any and all of the readings that apply, as each one of them may resonate differently for you. And then, as always, do keep in mind these readings are general in nature. They're meant to tap into and to be relevant to a more broad collective of individuals. So not all of the information that comes through will be for you specifically. That's why I highly recommend you do take anything and everything that does resonate for you, however that might make sense to your specific situation. And whatever that kind of activates or triggers in you, keep an open mind to anything that might be helpful beyond that, and you can simply leave the rest. So Libra, I'm super excited to be here. It's been all day. It's taking me all day to get your reading prepared. I've kind of been like putting the pieces together in the spare moments that I've had. It's been kind of a busy day. So you're actually my first evening recording. I've been able to just do mostly during the day, and I've been trying to space them out, but yeah, I kind of like it. And once I kind of got your channeled messages and everything, I was really excited to read for you, and I didn't have the time to start, so I had to put it off till this evening. So I'm super excited to finally be here. I can't believe it's already June. That means I've been reading cards for you guys for 6 months already. So it's already been half a year, which is hard to believe. So whether it's your first time here or you're returning, thank you for sharing this time and space with me. I really do appreciate it, and this is something that I really enjoy being able to do, and I'm looking forward to continuing to record more readings for you as the months progress. But yeah, I'm very excited to take a look and see what kind of energy June might have in store for you. I've got your oracle cards here. We'll get you some tarot, of course, and as usual, I will begin with your channeled energy, impressions, and messages that I took a moment to sit down and connect with before I got any cards out for you. And yeah, hopefully we will be able to connect you with some empowering messages and information that'll have you feeling prepared to make the absolute very best of the month of June. So yeah, we'll get into your energy impression and channeled messages. So it was very interesting. You're the second sign I've read for this month, and I'm almost done, that had kind of a lighter, more optimistic or expansive feeling energy. It wasn't everything is sunshine and rainbows, happiness and positivity, but it was definitely like a lighter kind of energy. So the sense of kind of giving yourself the opportunity to connect with hope. And I very much got the impression, the one thing that kind of kept coming to mind that I kept kind of feeling was the idea of either getting the monkey off your back or trying to get the monkey off your back. So this could be something that, you've been heavily invested in or has been taking up a lot of your time. Perhaps something that you've been really focused on, or maybe even plagued by, something you've been struggling to figure out how to manage or integrate or overcome. So whatever that is for you, whatever that thing that you've just been kind of almost exhausting yourself dealing with, or you've been really in the thick of, I kind of get the sense that this month is maybe a time, if you're not already connected with that energy, maybe this is something that will be helpful, but almost kind of turning a blind eye to it, not in an ignorant way, but in the sense of giving yourself the opportunity to disconnect from it a little bit, remove your energy from it a little bit, and kind of just putting the blinders on so you can give yourself a bit of a break, because I do get the sense that this is something you may realize, maybe you don't, but it's kind of you may be so enveloped in whatever it is, and so in the thick of it that you can't really figure out how to manage it, right? So it's you're almost too close to it. So I very much got the sense that it's you need to kind of disconnect from it, give yourself a break, remove your energy from it in order to get some time and some distance from it so that you can gain a little bit of perspective. So perhaps, to become aware of your blind spots or the ways that you were kind of limited previously, and to get a new perspective so that you can come back in with a new approach that might work better. So if that makes sense for you, that's very much yeah, it's the idea is like giving yourself a break from whatever has been weighing on you in order to connect with an approach that might help you to kind of like remedy or better manage whatever that is in the long term. So it's not like an ignorant avoiding your problems. It's acknowledging that they're there and you're just too close to them right now, and giving yourself that little break so that maybe like next month you can hop back in and do something about it. And I also got the sense, so when I was channeling your energy, when I was trying to like connect and get your messages, I was like really incredibly distracted. Like I really like I don't daydream a lot, like unintentionally. Usually I set aside time to like do that for myself. I try to be like present with whatever I'm doing. And it was really interesting because I was like specifically kind of like meditating and trying to connect to your energy to get your channeled messages. And like I was off in like, I was off thinking about a topic that had absolutely no connection or relevance, just in like my own world. And not only that, but like there were a lot of cards that were kind of just popping out. And so you might have a lot of thoughts. You might have a lot going on in your head. There might be a lot of things that you're thinking about that are maybe weighing on you, that are just kind of circling around and around in your head. And you might just need to find a way to expel them or express them. So maybe journaling, writing them down, talking to somebody, just finding a way to kind of like get that out of your head so that it's not circling round and round. Because I get the sense that it might be a little bit built up and it might be kind of chaotic to the point where it's like, even when you don't want to be focusing on it, it's just like making itself known or like distracting you. So that's something to keep in mind. And so for your channeled messages, the first one that came through was regrets. And so I got the sense of like, being able to acknowledge anything that you might think of as a regret, anything that you feel regretful about, or that kind of connects to that, any individual experience, decision that you've made, whatever it might be for you. However you connect with the idea of regret and the feeling of regret, it's kind of like there needs to be an acknowledgement and working through of whatever that is for you. And it's acknowledging that like quite often we think of regrets as like mistakes, something negative, something that maybe led to our downfall, something that we failed at, that we didn't do well enough. And I think that like regret is a difficult emotion, but quite often it's tied to something that either means a lot to us or has hurt us, or sometimes it's both, right? And so it's trying not to judge yourself for feeling regret or experiencing regret because you perceive that as a negative thing, because it's not about the regret. It's about whatever that's trying to, whatever's trying to get your attention, whatever's coming up to the surface. So it's like, what is that regret connected to? Like, what is that trying to tell you? Is it trying to tell you that you feel a certain way about a specific person, or, like, yeah, so I would say like whatever that is for you, try to approach it with curiosity and don't judge yourself based on like what is positive and negative, and maybe just kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive into what it's connected to, because it's probably there's just some hurt there, or there's something that's unresolved that's just looking to be released. And most often we can do that through acknowledgement. Like sometimes it's not anything that we actively have to do anything about or change. It's just like allowing ourselves to be seen, right? Acknowledging ourselves, maybe even like talking to someone about it, just to put it out there and get rid of it, right? The next channeled message that came through was actually no. So like those two words together. And so it was kind of like, go one of two ways. The initial impression that I got is like correcting somebody, like it might even be with like a little bit of sass, or you might have a little bit of fire or enthusiasm behind it. So if somebody's kind of coming at you with a narrative that is false or toxic, or maybe just completely uninformed, it is the idea of kind of like stepping in and interrupting whatever that is, and taking the opportunity to speak your mind or to share your truth, So it's like you might find yourself stepping in to correct other people, and it could also be correcting yourself, right? So it's like if you find that you get off on a train of thought that is, not healthy, not productive for you, not empowering, right? Like it could be old habits that you're trying to break. It's about being able to interrupt that and to kind of make that correction. And then the other sense that I got of it was like also like changing your mind, right? So it's like you might say yes to things. Maybe you say yes to like people please, maybe you say yes out of guilt or obligation, and then it's kind of recognizing when you've done that before it gets too far. Like just because you've said yes to something that maybe you shouldn't have said yes to, it's like you don't necessarily have to follow through when you realize that you made a decision that maybe doesn't align with what you want. It's being able to like step in there, interrupt it, and say like, actually no, like I can't do that, or I don't want to do that. And it's important to just like when you do make that realization to take your power back instead of feeling as though you have to follow through and commit, because at whatever stage you realize that you're maybe dishonoring yourself or falling out of alignment, it's just important to claim your power back at that point in time, right? And so, yeah, this could come along with just being more aware of the decisions that you're making, being more decisive, and maybe even investigating what the word no means to you. Do you have a hard time saying no, and why? So that might be something. The next message that came through was the idea of like morphing into someone or something new. So it's the sense of like working really hard, maybe even being in transition, like, you acknowledge what you were and what you're trying to work toward, and you're kind of in this middle ground where you're not really either one of those. And yeah, the idea, it's like kind of like a metamorphosis, a transformation, major growth. So there could be something specifically like in personal development, spiritual, emotional, could be career, it could be within relationships. Maybe there's something that you're really working on, something that you're trying to heal, habits or patterns that you're trying to break. But yeah, there's a sense of like working to kind of integrate and connect with a new version of yourself, or a new expression of yourself, or self-concept. So I thought that was really promising. So that might be something you're focused on this month. The next channeled message I thought was kind of funny because it was "my mother told me so." And this is kind of like that thing where it's like you might not understand what something means. You might not understand why you're doing it. It's just that kind of like do what you're told, don't ask questions because I said so. But this is specifically like my mother told me so. So it's like my mom said it, it has to be right, because you're raised in a capacity where it's like, you listen to your parental figure, your authority figure. You don't question them. You just assume that they're right. And as children and, young adults, we're not necessarily in a position to challenge authority or, well, to be able to make certain changes. We kind of have to adapt in order to be cared for and protected. And so this could be a month of coming to realizations about things that you were told, either things that you were told you had to do or to think or to believe or to value, that maybe you don't really align with. Maybe they're not true for you. Maybe it's just something that you always accepted to be true because you were told that you were supposed to do it. And you're kind of coming to realize like, oh, hey, there are certain beliefs or certain habits that I have that I picked up or that I was told is like the right way to do things. And now I realize that maybe there's a better way for me, or maybe that's something that's not important to me. And it's important to being able to like realize what you picked up on, what was ingrained in you versus what's right for you, and being willing to let go of anything that is not necessarily good for you or working for you. So, and this can be good and bad things, like things that we've absorbed. And it could particularly have to do with your mom or a mother figure, like a maternal figure. So it could be in that relationship. It could be related to experiences that you've had, things that you've been told. There could even be like a childhood wound or a mother wound there, that's kind of coming to be exposed, that things may be coming up. And so I think like anything that you associate with your mom, something that your mom told you or expected of you, it's trying to figure out like if it's true in general, if it's true for you, if it's serving you, and if not, like maybe there might be some work to be done to help you kind of process releasing that, because it can be difficult to let go of those things that we're taught to believe and taught to, act upon. Because sometimes there's a fear of judgment or abandonment if we don't fit that criteria or follow those rules, right? So I'd be very curious to know like if that's a thing for you this month. The next message that came through was gracious. So the idea of being gracious. So, being kind and courteous and polite in all situations with all individuals. It's acknowledging that, there's a kind and polite way to handle any given situation, regardless if you are enjoying where you're at, regardless of what you think or feel about the person that you're engaging with. It's just kind of like basic human decency. It's like you don't have to love everyone. You don't have to respect everyone's opinion. You don't have to get along with them, but it's kind of like not losing sight of like maintaining that integrity for yourself, right? And it's like acknowledging, hey, I can be kind and polite and courteous to somebody, even if they're not to me, even if I don't like them, even if I don't agree with them. And like that says more about you. That's more about your relationship to yourself and your commitment to conducting yourself in a way that you can feel good about. And then it also like it doesn't require you to like pander to people or to be disingenuous. So it's kind of like you may be working through like, okay, how do I treat somebody kindly and politely that I don't like without, having to go overboard or having to be fake? Because it's like, I don't want to tell people, I don't want to say things that I don't believe, right? And I think the important thing to recognize is that like being courteous and polite is different than pandering to somebody or lying or telling white lies, right? So it's like the more that you know yourself and the more that you can own what's true for you and how you feel, the more that you know the space that you have to work in order to be courteous. And sometimes being courteous means, just keeping things very polite and very frank and like not saying too much. So that might be something that's coming up. And yeah, I don't know. It's acknowledging like, yeah, you don't have to like everybody, but you can still conduct yourself in a way that you can feel good about at the end of the day. And your final channeled message was, why isn't this working? So like asking yourself the question, like, why isn't this working? And it's kind of like a sense of like, kind of running into roadblocks, hitting your head against the wall. This could be something that is like a tried and true method for you. It's been your go-to, it's always worked, and now you're finding that you're in a position where it's not working for one reason or another. And like it might be difficult to kind of fathom why it's not working because it always has in the past. This could literally be anything for you if this resonates. And so I would say, like, especially whether it's something new, whether it's a new approach that you're trying out that's not working and you're like, I don't understand why, like, do I need to tweak my method? Like, is this just not the right approach at all? So perhaps there's like a little bit more trial and error and figuring out like what you need to tweak to make it work for you. Or if it's something that has always worked for you and no longer works, it's probably more of a question of saying like, well, why does it no longer work, right? Like, when did you start doing this? Where were you when it was working for you? And how have you changed since then? How has your mindset changed? How have your physical and mental and emotional needs changed? How have your resources, like your time, your money, your support, like, your energy changed, right? And then it's kind of like when you can take a moment to recognize that you're in a different space, then it's like you don't hang so tightly to the things that once worked, because you can kind of see like, well, I've changed so much. It's kind of, if it doesn't work, there's a reason. And then you might be able to better identify where you're at now, what you need, and maybe either tweak your approach or find a new approach altogether that is going to be more suited to where you're at right now and what you're working with, and that'll kind of like set you up for success. So there's a sense of like flexibility and like personal discovery in there. So we'll get into your channeled messages. Your 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 actual cards. Your oracle message, the first one for you this month is mirror. And it says, who or what is triggering you? And I feel like you guys had this one recently, Libra. I feel like within the last few months, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you've had this card before. And then your second is double mission, lightworker starseed, serve the world by being you. And so I will give you a disclaimer because I know everybody has like a different approach to spirituality and the things like this deck is the Starseed Oracle. So the fact that it says Lightworker Starseed doesn't surprise me. It's a little bit more out there, which can make it more challenging to read in a manner that applies to people at all different with all different types of perspectives on spirituality and all that kind of stuff. So I will say it is a little bit out there, so it might not apply to you. It might totally turn you off. It might spark your interest, but either way, I'm going to try to find like a more practical, grounded sense for those of you who also are not maybe as far out there or open-minded in terms of spirituality and these concepts of star seeds and light workers and so on. So first and foremost, let's start off with mirror. This card is meant for you this month. Like there is absolutely no doubt, because I was shuffling this deck trying to get your card, and there was 3 times where a little pile of cards fell out, right? So I didn't take the card because there was like 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And it's like, that's just too much. I just want one. But the funny thing is that each of those times when those little piles of cards fell out, this was the one that was like on the bottom, like the first one that I would see. And so the second or third time that it came out, I was like, oh, well, maybe I should just take it. And I was like, well, because it's coming out with so many cards, like, let's just give it a good shuffle and see what individual card pops out. And if this individual card pops out, I'm not going to be surprised, but I'm going to take that as just extra, extra emphasis, right? And sure enough, this is the card that popped out. So Libra, what this tells me is this may be a month where you are really dealing with a lot of triggers. Either things are really, really triggering you, or there's like a lot of residual kind of thoughts and feelings related to the types of things that trigger you that are going to be coming up. And because I am pretty sure that you had this a few months ago, it could be very well like this is an energy that you've been working with or struggling with a lot. Maybe it's something that's been happening a lot, or it's something that's like important to you that you've recognized about yourself and that you're really trying to focus on and work through, but it's been like a struggle. So if anything, this is just giving you the opportunity to kind of get a little bit more experience with this triggering energy, what that means for you, because it's really just trying to shine a light on the parts of you that are not being seen or heard or acknowledged or like healed. And so this is all about recognizing that when we have those experiences that trigger us, we can be triggered by anything, right? It can be a song, it can be an emotion, it can be a person, someone that we know, someone that we don't know at all, a behavior, a pattern, a place, right? And essentially what's happening is like we react usually like emotionally, right? And usually reactivity, it's kind of like that knee-jerk reaction that might not be the most healthy or empowering response to a situation, or it might just really evoke these really challenging emotional experiences that we classify as being negative, right? So it's like we may have anger, we may have frustration, jealousy, feeling feeling possessive, feeling, maybe highly critical or judgmental of other people. Like it could be anything, and not just other people, but of yourself as well, right? Like playing the comparison game. And so it's recognizing that whatever it is that's triggering you, whatever you're focusing or fixating on when you're in that like triggered kind of reactive state, whatever it is, it's not outside of you. It's something within you that you possess. It's something that you connect with. It's something either that you believe about yourself or you've been told to believe, or a way that you've been wounded in the past that hasn't quite been acknowledged or rectified, and it's just asking to be acknowledged. So it's basically like whatever you've got going on on the inside is just going to be reflected back to you through your external environment. So through your environment, through your relationships, in terms of like contact with other people. And so it's recognizing that, like, whether you like what you see or not, whether it's a positive or negative thing that you're looking at outside of yourself or in someone else, it's recognizing that it has absolutely nothing to do with them. The only reason that you connect with it on a positive or negative level, if you need to define it that way, is because it's a part of you, whether you realize it or not, whether you've come to know and accept that or not. So like negative, it's kind of like a challenging thing, right? Because if it's a negative expression or something that we feel like negatively about, right? So it's like you look at somebody else and a behavior that they have or a quality that they possess that it's like you just hate it, you can't stand it, and it sets you off. It's recognizing that the reason that that sets you off is because it resonates with you deeply, because it is ultimately a part of you. It might be a habit that you have, maybe one that you're conscious of and you're trying to work on, and other people expressing it just really triggers you further. Or it could be a habit or a quality that you have that you're not aware of, and maybe you're repressing, you're in denial of, and because you're denying the fact that it's a part of you and it's something that you experience and express and maybe struggle with, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to heal that by recognizing, like, hey, that's part of me, that's something I have a hard time with. And if you don't accept that it's part of you, then it's really difficult to release that, right? To come into full acceptance of your shadow and your light. And then the converse of that is like when we see things in people that we admire or things that we want for ourselves, it's recognizing that we have a tendency to put people on a pedestal when we see them as having the things that we want, or exhibiting the behavior or the qualities that we want for ourselves or that we hope to obtain. And so sometimes instead of recognizing, like, hey, somebody else is doing that and I really respect them, and recognizing that that's within you and that you already have that, it's just learning how to acknowledge and accept and then feel comfortable expressing it. And feeling inspired and empowered to do so. A lot of times we put people on this pedestal as having something that we don't have, putting them above ourselves. And then the only way that we feel like we can be better is by like stepping on them, right? Like having to kind of knock them down off that pedestal to feel better about ourselves. And then similarly, when we acknowledge maybe the things that we don't like about other people, we put them below us, right? So we have a need to feel as though we're better than them, and then we look down on them, and that doesn't do us any good, because inevitably we separate ourselves from that maybe like negative trait that we dislike or that's triggering to us. And because we put it below us, it's like it's not worth our time. It's not something that we're even concerned with, and we don't have the opportunity to ever acknowledge it, right? So it's recognizing that it is totally normal to have triggers and to be reactive about certain things, but it's just something that's inside of you that's longing for you to acknowledge it. And you don't necessarily need to do anything with it. Like obviously, if it's related to a past hurt or trauma or experience, like there's probably a lot more to unpack there. But sometimes it can just be accepting, like, hey, this is part of who I am too. Maybe I don't like egotistical douchebags because I have a tendency to be one myself, right? Maybe I have a tendency to be self-righteous and think that I know everything, and that's why I don't like other people showing up in that energy. And it's being able to grant other people grace and know that, like, it's not just that they're an awful person that you hate. It's just like there's a part of yourself that you're at odds with. There's a part of yourself that's maybe wounded, that you are having a hard time accepting and integrating, because we're always going to have that light and dark. We're going to have the things that are wonderful and beautiful and that we can feel good about, and we're going to have those things that we really struggle with and that are not as pretty, that we have to kind of bring into balance. And the fact is, like, we're always going to have that light and dark, and we have to learn how to accept both instead of feeling as though like one is supposed to reign supreme over the other and we're supposed to eradicate all the things that are dark about us, right? Because it's like that's part of who we are, right? We can't we can't deny it, because to deny it is to resist it, which means it only has a more firm grasp over us, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. So this has everything to do with you acknowledging what's going on inside of you and being able to treat the world, treat people, treat your experiences as just a mirror, right? And that when you're seeing things that upset you, you're seeing yourself. What parts of yourself have you rejected? What parts of yourself have you denied? What parts of yourself have you been trying to avoid? And similarly, what parts of yourself have you, and so that can be negative, like not wanting to see, you know, the not so flattering aspects of ourselves, but also like our beauty, our strength, you know, our creative ability, our, you know, all the gifts that we have, right? So it can be about being more self-aware, being more willing to recognize like areas for growth, but it's like not just areas for growth, it's also the wonderful, beautiful things about you. And it's being able to fully recognize that you are a dualistic being, and you're going to have those opposing energies, those opposing qualities. And that's the beauty of how complex we are as human beings. Right? And so, yes, this month, you might have a lot going on internally. You might have a lot of situations that you feel triggered by or reactive to. And it's recognizing like, just don't get yourself too amped up in terms of like judging other people or judging yourself, but just say like, okay, if I'm experiencing this, it's because there's something here. Right? And it's like, try to treat yourself with a little bit of kindness and compassion, a little bit of understanding. And in place of judgment, I find that curiosity and a willingness to kind of say like, what is this saying to me? Like, what does this say about me? Why might I feel this way? And sometimes when we're judging others, or we're judging ourselves, or we're avoiding something, or we're labeling something as like bad, it's not necessarily true in general. It's not necessarily true for us. It could be something that we're taught to believe, or it could just be a defense mechanism. It could be something that we've decided to believe, even though we know it's not true, because it makes us feel more safe, or it keeps us from having to accept maybe a difficult truth or come face to face with something that really does need our attention, right? So it's recognizing that we have ways of tricking ourselves into staying in that kind of reactive space. It might be a comfort zone, but we're not necessarily giving ourselves the opportunity to grow. And this is a really, really beautiful month for, it might feel tumultuous because let's be honest, like being triggered is not fun. It's not a fun experience. And it takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to kind of like to talk yourself through it, right? To treat yourself with kindness and to be willing to take a look in that mirror and see what it's showing you. And so I would just say, like, just recognize that if that is happening for you, like I said, it happening to you, it's actually happening for you, right? And that the more that you can just kind of lean in and drop that resistance, and just try to meet yourself where you are, and to see, you know, who's triggering you and what is it that's triggering you, and what is that trigger activating in you? What is it making you feel? And when have you felt that way previously? Is this something that is attached to an experience you've had previously? Is this something that you were taught? So it's kind of like investigating a little bit more than just the very surface, because it's easy. It's easy to take a look at that reflection on a vastly superficial level, and then not really dive a little bit deeper. So I would say that any kind of self-reflection, any willingness to see yourself through others, and yeah, I think it's going to be highlighted, but it's also going to be rewarded. And I see it as like an opportunity for you to come further into your self-awareness, your self-knowledge, your self-acceptance. And it's kind of like, you know how they say the truth can set you free? Well, sometimes being able to see ourselves more truly for who we are, or for who we truly are, like light and dark, the good and the bad, it just gives us the ability to extend more love and compassion for ourselves, because we can acknowledge like we're complex, we have a lot going on, we're trying our best, rather than just expecting that we should be perfect and trying to cover up the parts that don't feel perfect, and then rejecting the imperfections of other people as a result. Because ultimately, whatever you think and feel and believe about yourself, you're going to project onto other people. And that's what you're going to see in them as well. So also like the reactions that you're having, the experiences that you're having with other people, the way you think and feel about them, it's also a mirror. That's just kind of like that's how you feel about yourself, right? You're not going to treat anyone differently than you treat yourself, because that's kind of like the essence of how you view the world, right? How you love yourself, how you connect to yourself. So I don't know. I think that's really cool. And yeah, with this being kind of like, it seems to be a somewhat repeating theme for you guys. It could be that perhaps this is something that you were triggered with a couple of months ago when this card last came up. And now maybe it's like, I just want you to keep in mind, like if you're being triggered by the same thing, or you feel like you're regressing and you're not making progress, it's like, this is probably just the opportunity for you to start putting into practice that awareness, right? Because it's like you can be triggered by something and you can try and work through it, but you're not necessarily going to refine your ability to change your perception and to come into more awareness and self-acceptance if you're not tested, right? So sometimes we take feeling tested as a sign that we are failing, or that we're not good enough, or that we're not doing enough, when really it's the exact opposite. It's giving us the opportunity to put into practice the lessons that we're learning. So I think that's really lovely for you guys, but it could be frustrating. And so here we go. This double mission, light worker, starseed. If you don't know what a light worker is, if you don't know what a starseed is, if you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting, that's weird, or whatever, if you feel so inclined, definitely do some research and see what you connect with, how that might resonate with you. I also would really highly recommend that you, if you do feel curious about researching, to maybe Google like specific qualities and characteristics of light workers and of star seeds, like what makes them kind of different, and see if you identify with any of them, because that might give you like a frame of reference, excuse me, if you are interested in becoming more familiar with that. It might be a helpful tool for your own development and self-actualization. But yeah, essentially the idea of a light worker is somebody who's here on earth to help spread the light. So it's like, that's love, kindness, compassion, by demonstrating it, by spreading it for other people to feel, and encouraging other people to connect with it themselves. So it can be like, oftentimes they're like healers, or they work in they're in lines of work where they can like positively impact other people, like in like more deeper, meaningful ways. And the idea of a star seed is that, like, coming here with a purpose, and like the mission is like to help kind of improve or upgrade like the overall like consciousness of individuals and humanity as a whole. And so it's like, you are here not only to live and learn and grow and develop your own soul, like to learn your own life lessons and to kind of upgrade to like then that constant like next level of like awareness and kindness and compassion, all those qualities, but to help others do so as well. And so the work that you do for yourself is not only beneficial for you in many ways, but in allowing yourself to connect with that light and to experience that, you're inevitably going to express that to other people. You will be a beacon of light for others. So as you do that work, you're also kind of leading the way by showing other people what it looks like, inspiring other people to do that, and inevitably just being in a higher vibration and connecting more with love. And kindness and compassion means that you're naturally exuding that, and people are benefiting from that. And so it's kind of recognizing that like the work that you do on yourself also has benefit for the people around you. And like, even if you don't buy into being a light worker or being a starseed, it's not necessarily something that you have to do or to take action on, although quite often it is incorporated into careers. So it could be like a career where you're like healing or helping or supporting people in some way, or like, you know, where your positive presence and your loving awareness has more of the ability to like support and impact people. So if that makes sense to you, or maybe you're drawn to that kind of career, But it doesn't have to be. And so this is basically saying, like, serve the world by being you. So you can make it your career. It can be a part of who you are, but like, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything that you set out to do, or that you know, set a goal, or like a big path that you have to set out on, because this is all about like whatever it is that lights you up. Whatever it is that lights you up, that's like part of your purpose. That's part of your natural gift. And the most beneficial thing that you can do for yourself is allow yourself to connect to those very things that make you feel uplifted, and that light you up, you know, that make you feel alive, that connect you with joy and love, because doing that allows you to step more into your authentic self-expression, right? To kind of give yourself more space to be as you are, and to enjoy life, and like those natural kind of gifts and those things that you align with. And that in doing that, in doing the things that light you up, you are a beacon for other people. Whether you realize it or not, whether you intend to be or not, that's just the way that it is. And so other people get to benefit from you doing the things that light you up, either because you share that with them, you impact them positively through doing it, or perhaps you just set a quiet example of what it looks like to live a more heart-centered life, where you're willing to give yourself time, and energy, and like to devote a part of your life into the things that are most important to you. It's like, you know, it's like seeing people who are passionate and following their calling, right? There's something inspirational about that, and being able to connect with people who love what they're doing makes your day better. So it's like, you know, even if you're dealing with somebody, even if you're somebody who like your passion is customer service or talking to and connecting with people, right? You could be working at a coffee shop. You don't have to be like solving world hunger or anything. You could just be working at a coffee shop, and your presence and the fact that you're good at what you do and you enjoy it and it lights you up makes the day of every person that you come into contact with, right? So it's like, you can't underestimate the absolute value that you being your best self and like just kind of allowing yourself to enjoy can have on other people, right? So it's not just about you, it's about everyone else as well. And it's like, also like setting that example, it helps inspire other people to feel more confident and more comfortable, you know, expressing themselves more authentically, doing the things that make sense to them. So like I said, you know, whether you want to take the really spiritual lightworker starseed approach or not, it's the most, you know, in the most basic tangible way, it's like you being yourself and doing the things that make you the most happy. You know, it impacts others inevitably. Other people take notice. Oh, okay. So your first, I just dropped all the cards that I was holding. Okay, your first card for this month is Justice, which is card number 11. Is that your card? I think that might be your card, Libra. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yes, Justice is the Libra card. Oh, so there you go. Your card shows up. So, and this also could have to do with like karma too. Okay, your second card this month is the Seven of Swords. Lots of air energy. Oh, I really like this so far. Your third card is the Seven of Pentacles. And we'll get you one more. This is so awesome. I really do like this. So your fourth and final card for this month is the Wheel of Fortune. And we have the Devil at the bottom of the deck. So the Devil is Capricorn energy. So we've got your Libra energy here. We've got Capricorn energy as well. Okay, so I'm going to get your clarifiers right away, and then we'll just read all of the cards together. But this is like an interesting vibe so far. Okay, so to clarify Justice, we have the Fool. Oops. Okay, now we're going to clarify the Seven of Swords. So we've got the Three of Wands. And to clarify the Seven of Pentacles, we have, the Two of Wands. And finally, to clarify the Wheel of Fortune, we have the Strength card, which is also associated with Leo. Right, and the bottom of the deck, the Mother of Cups, which is the Queen of Cups. Right, interesting. So at the bottom of the deck with the Devil and the Mother of Cups, these are kind of like opposing energies, because one is like Capricorn, earth sign energy. It's like very material based, material driven, like of the world. And it often has to do with, it can do with like indulgences. It can do with, have to do with a preoccupation with like the material world, material goods. It can have to do with like addiction, temptation, maybe even like overindulgence, and also the things that we feel like we're not in control of, right? Like the things that we feel as though like, you know, we're captive to them, we're a slave to them. It could be habits, it could be some form of addiction or dependency. So it's like this idea of feeling helpless to be able to overcome those things that, you know, maybe you know aren't healthy or helpful or serving you, but it's like, oh, just like you can't seem to break that habit, right? And a lot of this has to do with the illusion, like the illusion that our power is outside of us, or that we don't have the ability to ultimately make the final decision, that we're a slave to our conditions or to temptation. And it's recognizing that like you have the ability to make the decision for yourself, and the illusion that the power is not within your hands is just that, it's an illusion. So it's something that you can kind of work through and change your mind about. And this is really deeply related to like a very keen sense of, I don't know, like emotional awareness, intuitive awareness. So it could be like in terms of, it could be feeling like a slave to your emotions, or like you're out of control, or that your emotions pose an issue to you, and they're not something that you're able to like acknowledge and value and incorporate into your life, because they're either you're judging yourself based on your like emotional experiences, or and feeling as though like some are positive, some are negative, and like trying to eradicate the ones that aren't practical or don't serve you. Or it could be like a fear of acknowledging those emotions and what that might mean for you as a person and your stability. But like this is like I said, very opposing energy, and this is what's like underlying. So this is kind of like informing and influencing the progression of this. So it's kind of like opposing energy between like the material world and your emotions, and like how you feel about yourself and your personal power, your ability to make decisions for yourself. I don't know how that might apply to you, but it's a really interesting energy. And you are being encouraged to come into this month in your energy, which is, it's basically just about, you know, balance. Justice is all about balance and fairness, you know, righting wrongs. It's, it's a card of karma as well. So it's recognizing that, you know, the things that we say and do, our motives, our intentions ultimately imbue whatever we do with that energy. And so if we're being motivated, or we're taking action, or we're doing things from you know, a misaligned or perhaps less empowered place, taking action on that and cementing that into our physical reality will have repercussions, and that influences the way that people feel about us, that interact with us, and they come back to us. So it's kind of like being mindful of how you are carrying yourself, what you're saying, what you're thinking, what you're doing, trying to keep things into alignment with what feels right and true for you, in a way that is fair to all, right? So that it's like you don't want to be like self-righteous and just focused on yourself and your own well-being. It's like you don't want to be motivated to take action and to do anything that might be hurtful or disempowering to other people. And that doesn't mean that people can't be hurt by the decisions that you make, because ultimately, if you're doing what feels right for you from a place of like honesty and fairness, you know, people inevitably, you know, may be hurt because perhaps it doesn't align with what they want for you, or perhaps it doesn't align with what they want in general, and that means that you two are going in separate directions. But so this is just honoring honoring yourself, honoring your truth. And it's also being able to balance out the light and the dark. So it's not putting too much pressure on yourself to be positive or productive or, whatever. I think it's taking a good look at what you value and what you dislike. Like the vibe that I'm getting, especially with this whole triggering thing being here, and the idea of like things are coming up to be recognized and claimed, because whether they're positive qualities, what you would perceive to be positive or what you would perceive to be negative at the root of whatever's triggering you, it's recognizing that like there may be a deeper inventory of what it is that you value, what you label as positive or negative, and how that impacts your view of yourself and the world and what you feel to be true. And if that actually rings true for you, if that's actually right for you, or if it's coming from a place of fear or, hurt, right? So it's kind of like taking stock and trying to bring those things into balance and recognizing like we're always going to have qualities that are potentially less desirable and qualities that are more desirable. And yes, we have to fully own and accept all of them. It doesn't mean that we pretend we don't have any issues and we put this pressure on ourselves to be perfect and happy and, just flawless all the time. But it also doesn't mean that we give ourselves permission to like step into this darkness and say, well, like I just suck, and like to be reckless and to make bad decisions. So it's recognizing that awareness is the most powerful tool that you have, and that awareness leads you to a place where you can grant yourself more understanding and to accept yourself more wholly for like what you see as your light and your shadow, or your positive or your negative. So yeah, you might need to do an inventory. Like what do you consider to be negative? Negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative experiences, negative qualities in yourself and in other people. And then the converse of that, and recognize that this is the lens that you're seeing the world through, right? This is the way that you're judging yourself and others. And if it's informed by perhaps lower vibrational energy or informed by fear, then there's probably a lot of yourself that you're judging yourself for. There are a lot of ways that you're limiting yourself. There are a lot of unnecessary pressures you're putting on yourself. So I really do kind of see this as coming into, it's kind of taking that stock of like how you label things and what that causes you to put focus on and move toward. So it's like if you're focused on eradicating and denying all of the negative because you should only be experiencing positive, or if you're kind of disconnected from the positive and you're focusing too heavily on the negative, like how that kind of throws the whole system out of whack, and inevitably it prevents you from being truly authentic because you're not in a place of self-knowledge and acceptance. And it's like that's, I make it sound like that's something that's easy to achieve or that like will be lasting, right? Like it's always a balancing act, and that's the whole point, right? But it's like what you put out there comes back to you. And I think that's why it's most important to know yourself, because you want to be bringing in things that you want to be putting energy out there, but also bringing in things that help you stay in a space of alignment with yourself. And yeah, so for this to come out with the Fool card, it's kind of like there's an opportunity to start fresh. And the Fool, the Fool isn't inhibited by a whole bunch of expectations or limitations or programming. It's kind of like it's this new kind of innocent energy, and because of that, it's like a fresh start. It's being untainted by the world, or being able to kind of like put that stuff aside. It kind of gives you the opportunity to lean more into who you truly are, or what really appeals to you. Like if you could do anything, what would you do, right? So instead of premeditating all sorts of success or all sorts of failure preemptively, or assuming that in order to get to a certain destination, there's X number of steps that have to go in this exact order. It's kind of saying like, the duckling or the gosling, whatever this is, it's on this branch and it doesn't know if it's going to be able to fly until it leaps off, right? So there has to be a certain amount of trust that there's ability and that things will happen as they're meant to. And ultimately, likely, even if it were to jump and perhaps its wings are not fully developed and it can't fly, like maybe the fall isn't that isn't that bad, isn't going to be that detrimental. And maybe this is a really pivotal step and experience in learning to fly, right? So it's kind of like being willing to take that leap of faith, and how you see yourself and how you come into like acceptance of both your positive and your negative qualities is going to impact your ability to really step out in a new direction that makes sense to you, right? So it's like you have to kind of find your true north and be able to keep yourself in balance with fairness and honesty, with not judgment, right? But it's trusting that things will work out, trusting that you'll be rewarded by doing what's right for you, following your heart and stepping out on this path, because it's like, as long as you're tuned into what is true for you and you're allowing that to guide you, then you're going to have the experiences that you're meant to have. But it's not just about thoughts and perceptions. It's about following your heart too, giving yourself the opportunity to step out in a new direction. So it's kind of nice. It's like also there's an opportunity not only for like new perspective or perhaps a more aligned perspective on yourself and your situation in life and the people around you, but the ability to start allowing yourself to move in a new direction that's going to be better for you, right? So it could be like learning, right? There's actually, it's funny because I just noticed we've got mirror here, and that's exactly what this is here. Like so there's the balancing of the scales, right? And like, everything balances out in the end. What you put out eventually comes back to you in one form or another, or you pay the consequences or you reap the rewards. But she's also balancing like the light and the dark, right? And there's like an acknowledgement that they're both acceptable, they're both whole, they're both necessary. So they're both necessary to make the whole, right? And it's about finding the right balance. So that's exactly what this kind of mirror card and acknowledging your triggers is about. So that this could just be further emphasizing that. And so what's coming up is your challenge for this month. This is like fear, doubt, anxiety. It can be a feeling of being unsafe, not being able to trust yourself or others, perhaps being surrounded by people that you feel like may not have your best interests at heart, or feeling as though, like this is kind of like sabotage, either having experienced sabotage before and fearing it. It could be an energy of self-sabotage, like giving up your power, which could go hand in hand with the devil. There's actually really similar colors too in those cards. And this is kind of the way that our fear and our doubts and those kind of negative things that make us cynical or worried or paranoid can totally hijack our perspective of life and ourselves. And then sometimes those thoughts and perceptions are just like not at all the truth. They're informed by our own pain and our own trauma. They're informed by our own shadow and perhaps the parts of ourselves that we don't like, that we haven't accepted, and we're afraid of encountering those qualities in the people around us. So it's like projection, right? Like if you're somebody who isn't necessarily trustworthy or, doesn't necessarily, not necessarily loyal or whatever, the thing that comes to mind is like people who cheat on their partners usually assume that the other person is cheating on them because that's the behavior that they struggle with, right? And so this is all about those kind of like dark thoughts, fears, the things related to like being able to trust people, being able to trust yourself, perceptions about your trustworthiness, your loyalty, your value, or that of the people around you. And it's like under the light of the full moon. So it's being exposed. So it's kind of like anything that's sneaky, anything that's not quite above board, anything that's not particularly healthy or empowered or serving you, it's not going to go unseen, right? So it's like you can't sneak around and do shady things in the light of day, right? It's like that stuff kind of happens in the darkness. And the thing is, the full moon is here illuminating this kind of sneaky stuff that's going on. So this could be like your tendency to be sneaky, the things that you try to avoid, maybe the things you try to like pulling the wool over somebody's eyes or getting away with something, or it could be an energy of the people around you. But anyways, like this energy is coming up as a challenge for you this month. And it can really have a lot to do with your beliefs about yourself. And so it's like kind of like not only is it difficult to get away with those things, but it's like whatever you do is kind of amplified right now. Like if you take the route that is not necessarily honorable or isn't necessarily one of integrity, that has the likelihood to be like illuminated, and you're not necessarily going to be able to get away with it or hide from it. And for it to come up with the Three of Wands, this could have something to do with some kind of like creative endeavor. It could be work related, a passion project, because the Three of Wands is kind of like being on a path of like connection to your passion and inspiration. It could be expressing that, uncovering that, giving yourself the opportunity to see where that might lead you, because it's like if you're willing to recognize that that's something to act on. So it could be like something to do with creativity, the things that light you up, and like how that kind of opens the door to possibility. And the thing is, like once you start following that path and connecting with and expressing that inspiration and allowing that to be a part of your life, once those doors open, once that potential is there to be realized, then you have to kind of come further into alignment with yourself. You have to know yourself better, because if you're kind of going to step through this portal where you can connect with all of these opportunities, you have to know yourself and you have to know what opportunities feel right for you, right? So you have to be able to come further into your knowledge of yourself in order to make empowered decisions that are going to be beneficial to you. And so it's kind of like being honest with yourself and other people about what is important to you, what you're doing and why, and making decisions that ultimately reflect what you want, because you're not going to be able to fool yourself. You're not going to be able to fool anyone else. Like this is, I think you're just being probably challenged to confront the parts of yourself that maybe you like to hide, maybe the anything that you tend to try and get away with. Because ultimately, like that's going to affect the path that you're on. And if you've got all of this beautiful creative energy to work with and all of this opportunity, then it's like the best thing that you can do is just be like straight up, above board, honest, and straightforward in your dealings, and do the things that make sense to you and the things that you like. Because the further that you move along a path of like passion and the things that light you up and that heart-centered energy, it's like every step forward that you make, you have to be more aware of who you are and what makes sense to you, so that you can make decisions from that like honest and fair place for yourself and for others, right? So this could very well be an energy that you're challenged by this month, and you're being asked to connect to the Seven of Pentacles and Two of Wands energy to help you kind of overcome this challenge. And so this is like keeping your eye on the prize, right? And recognizing that even though at times the things that we put our head down and we're like working toward may not seem as though they're manifesting, it may not seem as though our work is getting us anywhere, or like we're not seeing results for our effort. The Seven of Pentacles is about being willing to see the results of the effort that you've put in thus far, being able to take a moment to stop and recognize like, hey, finally this plant that I've been tending to for how long has bloomed. And it's recognizing there's a huge amount that has to go into making that happen. So seeing those results, seeing that evidence of your hard work, right? It's like there's a whole lot of time and effort that goes into it that, and like most of it is below the surface, right? So it's like you're seeing this little plant sprouting, but it's like, look at all of this that's gone on under the surface that you wouldn't necessarily see, right? And so it's recognizing that sometimes we can take a lot of action and put a lot of effort into something and feel as though it's not growing and feel as though it's not taking hold. And sometimes we just see this small little thing and we completely and entirely underestimate how much it's taken to get there. And it's important to recognize like your success and to be able to recognize the results of your effort. But it's also like it's easy to overlook. And so it's basically, you could be coming into a point in time where it's like, if you've been worried about whether or not you're going to see the results of your work, whatever it is that's important to you, it's like you may be starting to come into seeing that impacting your life in a more tangible, physical way, like more of that showing up in your external environment, either through relationships or material gain. It could be a career, a home, whatever. But it's like trusting that the seeds that you plant are working, but recognizing that you still have to show up and give that consistent care and effort over a long period of time, right? And it's like, think about a tree, right? Think about how long it takes a tree to become a giant tree, right? It can take years. And so it's recognizing that you will see the results of your labor, but it's also like, it's a labor of love. And that's why we have to kind of like be patient, be committed to ourselves, and like stay the course, like keep your eye on the prize and know that. And this is also like being willing to recognize all the hard work. So it's like, to somebody else, this might be this tiny little plant that's just starting to take hold. But to you, it's like, you know how much time and effort, right? So if you take a look back on all of the effort that you've put in and where you are now, where you are might seem small and insignificant in comparison to where you want to be. But in comparison to where you started, it could be a huge leap. So it's being able to recognize and to appreciate the fruits of your labor, even if you're not in a position to harvest and enjoy them or to share them with others. It's like recognizing that like you're here. It took so much to get here. And then this has to do, it's really interesting because this has to do with like making a choice, right? Making a choice to acknowledge your dark and your light, and to choose a path forward that makes sense to you, right? So this can be, so like the juxtaposing energies, right? It's like keeping this in balance. So it's like not letting the negative, critical, pessimistic side of yourself take you off track when you're not seeing the results that you want, or judge the results that you have as though you're not enough, right? And so it's kind of like making the decision to acknowledge like, yeah, I might have insecurities, or maybe I didn't feel like I worked as hard as I should have, but it's like always making the choice to do what lights you up, what empowers you, what takes you another step further in the direction of something that feels good, right? Because the shadow side of this is kind of like staying in the comfort zone. That comfort zone might be a toxic place where we judge ourselves. And we have to make the choice to step out of that into something new, which can be daunting and scary, but it ultimately gives us the opportunity to grow. So I think that's really lovely. And the highest possible outcome for this month is showing up as the Wheel of Fortune and the Strength card, which is huge energy, because the Wheel of Fortune is all about fate, you know, aligning with our fate, aligning with our destiny, taking inspired action in the world. And everything is about balance, Libra. You know, balancing out your light and your dark, and coming into a better level of acceptance and trusting that you'll be able to handle whatever comes your way. And that you can kind of balance out the parts that you reject versus the parts that you accept, or the parts that you celebrate and the parts that you avoid, or this idea of like positive and negative. Because it's basically saying like, if you can get into this balanced energy where you are willing to see yourself where you are and strive to connect with something that feels inspired, something that lights you up, something that kind of calls to you, it's stepping into your own energy and your own authenticity. And that is basically what puts the wheel in motion, because following that little calling of your heart, right? That's the way that our intuition tries to kind of get us on the track, you know, to a life that's going to be more fulfilling for us specifically. It'll look different for everyone. But it's like, once you take that step, you kind of have to surrender. You have to trust that you have the ability to handle whatever comes your way. And it's like, you're taking a chance on yourself, and you don't necessarily know how that's going to pan out, or how it's going to unfold, or who is going to be integral to your journey. You just kind of have to take the step from that place of, you know, whatever lights you up and makes you feel alive, right? And to allow yourself to connect with and embrace that energy, to express it, and for that to start, you know, impacting the world around you, right? So it's like, once you start expressing that energy, trust that you can stay aligned, trust that you can keep the light and dark in balance. You don't have to like overcommit, and you don't have to self-sabotage. So whether you run into something that's like really promising and you kind of like give up on putting effort in because you feel like, oh, I finally made it, everything's just easy now, or whether you run into a roadblock and you're like, oh great, like this obviously means I should never have even started to do this, and then you totally give your power away. It's trusting that whatever experience you have as a result of stepping out on this new path is going to be whatever you're meant to experience. And if you can approach it with an open mind, with like a beginner's mind, and be willing to learn, you kind of keep that wheel of fate and destiny in motion. So it's kind of like setting out on the path, not knowing what the end goal necessarily is, not knowing how you're going to get there, but being open to the experiences, the people and the places and the things that show up that are aligned with you and your energy, and trusting that step by step you can navigate. This is very much in alignment with the Fool's journey, right? But this is like, you have to take the first step, right? And in order to connect with your destiny, destiny is not something that's just going to happen for you, right? Like, it can be something that we're inclined to, but ultimately we have free will. So we have to make the decision to pursue it, to align with it, and to say yes to those opportunities. And you'll have a better gauge of what aligns with you when you are keeping yourself in balance and you're aware of your shadow and anything that's like sabotaging you, and you're kind of staying focused on your goals and trusting that it's whatever energy, whatever you're focusing on, you're going to get there. If you're looking inward, acknowledging yourself as a whole, staying tuned in on your true north. And the thing is, this takes strength. It takes courage, right? It's not like brute force and physical strength, but it takes the ability to kind of like dig deep and to believe that you can do it. And the biggest thing with the strength card is like kindness and love and compassion, and recognizing that those are our greatest strengths, right? Is being able to be kind and compassionate, first and foremost towards ourselves, right? We have to learn how to treat ourselves with the kindness and compassion and love that we expect ourselves to give to others, and that sometimes we give to others instead of ourselves. And so it's recognizing that when you exist in that place and you're able to meet yourself on that level, it makes it so much easier to accept yourself as a whole. It makes it so much easier to align with what feels right to you and to keep things in balance. So it's like, it takes that strength and courage to be able to acknowledge yourself, to see yourself, and to forgive yourself, and then to forgive others. And you really need to lean into that strength and courage as you kind of allow, as you kind of take a step on your destined path. Allow yourself to say yes and trust that you're going to figure it out, right? Because it can feel scary and vulnerable to step out in a new direction, or to not know what the next step is, and to trust that you'll be able to figure it out as it comes. And yeah, it can be really difficult not to let fear get the best of you, and not to let yourself be overwhelmed or taken off track, because it's kind of like, that's the most courageous thing to do, is to stay committed to yourself, and what feels right to you, even if it's not like a mainstream thing or something that other people understand or support. It's like doing it for yourself. So we've got affirmations. Relationships are assignments for optimal growth and healing. So one of the triggering, mirroring types of things could be coming up primarily in your relationships. So friendships, like work colleagues, family members, romantic relationships. So you might find that a lot of stuff is coming up for you to recognize, and for you to, your partner, your friend may be holding up the mirror to you, and it might be easy to kind of point the blame at them when really you should be taking a deeper look at yourself. So it's recognizing that any kind of turbulence that we, positive and negative, that we experience in relationships is really just meant to help us get to know ourselves and accept ourselves on a deeper level ultimately. And then I share my light with the world. So yes, this has everything to do with this whole light worker card. Whatever it is that you enjoy, whatever inspires you, whatever you're passionate about and lights you up, giving yourself, like taking time to figure out what that is, but also giving yourself permission to experience that. Because it's a beautiful thing. It's going to be really good for you. It's going to light you up. You don't have to figure out how to what you're going to do for other people, or how you fulfill your purpose, or how you share your light with the world. You just have to focus on getting lost and enjoying the doing of whatever it is that lights you up, and inevitably you light the world up around you. So If you are somebody that like puts pressure on yourself in terms of like having a purpose or what that purpose is, it's like whatever your purpose is whatever lights you up, whatever you really truly enjoy. Okay, and then we've got, for your final oracle card, we've got Observer. And I am just going to read, sorry, I'm just trying to find the guidebook, because I'm going to read this directly from the guidebook, and we're going to see how that might tie things together, or if it has any additional insight to offer you. My gosh, this reading is already the longest one. I thought yours was going to be the shortest, to be honest. I was kind of like, eh. Okay, Observer. Essential meanings: perspective, objectivity, neutral observation from a distance, which is interesting. That's kind of what I was picking up on, giving yourself a chance to kind of step back so you can gain some perspective. And perhaps that has a lot to do with your identity and the parts that you reject. So the Oracle's message: most people see the world through a personal lens. They closely identify with their feelings and experiences, so much so that they come to believe that these are the only reality. There are times when you need distance in order to gain perspective and understand your circumstances from a more neutral vantage point. Now is one of those times in your life. This is a perfect moment for you to begin to do some exploring. Instead of only considering yourself, consider what you need to understand about the conditions, people, culture, and environment you're engaged with now. You'll be so happy you did. Illumination is the miracle you seek and will indeed find. And then there's a relationship message. Sometimes you just can't see the forest for the trees in your way. Feelings can get all jumbled up, and often you hear one thing when a person says another. So that's kind of like, yeah, projection, right? It can be like an echo of an unresolved past experience dubbed over your conversation. Take time out before you react. It's likely the other person has no idea how his or her words have affected you. Take a few steps back and lend understanding to the situation. Have faith in your connection and trust that you can come together. Take to higher ground now and cultivate curiosity about what you observe in yourself, in others, and in the landscape. You will find things much improved sooner than you know. So that's interesting, because it kind of is reiterating a lot of the things that I've already been saying. There's a prosperity message. It is an advantageous time for you to get some distance from what you're doing and see your work and your projects from a different perspective. The trick is to connect the essence of your goals and aspirations while letting the form and timing be dictated by spirit. So basically having an idea of like what inspires you and what you want to achieve, and like kind of just stepping out and trusting that it'll manifest for you, as absolutely flaky as that sounds. So yeah, the trick is to connect with the essence of your goals and aspirations while letting the form and timing be dictated by spirit. You may be too personally attached to an outcome and unable to see the miracle because it's not turning out exactly as you planned. Trust spirit. The perfect vision of your abundance is right in front of you. Remain neutral and curious and watch the miracle unfold. And then there's a shadow aspect, so a protection message. Ever think sometimes your life options are suction cupped to your face and you can't see beyond yourself? There's a big world out there, a multitude of potential realities that you're unable to perceive at the present. So you're a little stuck. It's time to get advice from someone you trust, someone who has a better perspective on your circumstances. Other points of view are needed now before you move forward. Take heart. A beautiful vista is waiting for you to drink it in. You just need a little help widening your scope beyond your small self. So yeah, bigger picture. Whatever it is that you're dealing with that is unresolved is inevitably kind of limiting you from connecting with more. So yeah, it goes hand in hand with giving yourself a little bit of distance so you can get perspective. This is a crazy reading for you guys. I'm sorry it's so long, but like I'm here for it. It's been a good vibe, and generally Libra, you are a good vibe. So anyways, I hope this reading was helpful. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy this reading, the best way to support me is to like this video on YouTube, leave a comment. Beyond that, if there's anyone that you feel would be interested in or would benefit from my readings, feel free to share my content with them. And make sure you head over to my channel at Bright Soul Collective Tarot, subscribe, and make sure you're also signed up for notifications so you can stay up to date on new videos as they're posted. But yeah, Libra, it's been an absolute pleasure reading for you. I hope this month goes smoothly. I hope you're able to make the most of this energy. I'm really looking forward to reading for you next month and seeing what's in store. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you for sharing this time and space with me, and I wish you all the very best.